Happy Tuesday.
Happy gloomy Tuesday.
Gloomy Tuesday. Yeah, it's really dreary out here in North Carolina.
Yes,
So today we're going to talk about the friction between UX professionals and product management. And I hope those that are tuning in today can share your experiences, your questions, your pains, because we have seen it all. And let's start out by saying this is in no way a criticism towards product managers. It's the challenges and the ways of working and understanding what someone brings to the table. And sometimes we can get a little passionate about our
yeah,
beliefs, us being product managers, but also UX professionals. So
absolutely.
I think both parties can be guilty of letting emotion get in the way of good teaming practices. So we're going to talk about 4 ways that you can help to improve that relationship with your counterpart.
Yes.
So I think the first thing we want to talk about or kind of state is the role of UX versus the role of product management. So, what is your take on that?
That's always an interesting question because
Mhm.
sometimes I have a different perspective because of my background.
Mhm.
I've always felt like UX or the right UXer, with the right skill set can almost be like a proxy,
Mhm.
PM. But the user experience people oftentimes are focused on really looking at those user needs, at those expectations. A lot of,
Mhm.
if you're doing design, you get very focused on, hey, let's have great designs that are really consistent. Whereas product management, it varies. Sometimes let's do, when they're working with UXers, rapid iterations, let's get that
Mhm.
feature out. Let's do these pieces. And they forget about all the other things that the UXer can bring to the table that is more strategic,
Mhm.
long term, with deeper research.
The right UXer, because in your description of your experiences, what I think is worth noting that when you've had extensive experience in UX and you're more strategic in nature and the way in which you think about things and approach solutioning, there is the opportunity to look at yourself as a UXer, but also as a product manager, because you're ensuring with every decision, when you're looking at the questions in your research roadmap, you're focused not only on those short term wins, but those longer term goals around that product or service. And so, product managers, I think the first step is to look at your UX counterpart to recognize, do they have that skill? And if they do, can I involve them in more of a partnership rather than just delegating?
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of the attention comes into play is when it
Mhm.
becomes just delegating and you're just working on one feature, testing one feature, one
Mhm.
component, doing the traditional usability testing of a few tasks versus
Right.
really going in with that system thinking and looking at, long term, that whole journey and all the things that are working together. You can miss that. So
Mhm.
PMs, if you have that collaborative
Mindset.
working, yes, and working
Mhm.
relationship. One, it can take things off the PM's plate, and they can focus on,
Mhm.
the marketing, the messaging, the
Sales.
sales channel,
Mhm.
those sort of things. While the UXer with the right skill set is taking that broader, look, applying design
Yes.
thinking and really doing deeper research for the
Yeah.
problem.
And when you think about the ways in which, as a product manager, you can leverage a strategic thinking UX professional
Yeah.
in your brainstorming, in your ideas that relate to things that might not be on the roadmap that you're considering. And there's a good partnership that can occur, and making sure that that person can help you look more objectively at the near term roadmap items, those things that are in flight, and then
Right.
those longer term items, because that UX professional has the context of the customer needs, motivations, pain points. They
Yes.
are bringing a perspective that might add to what you're trying to either confirm or plan and that sort of thing. So avoid the conflict of, this is my role, that is yours. Stay in your lane and I'll stay
Right.
in
Yeah.
mine. And instead look at it as a, let's just sit down and have conversations about what we've done in the product or service and how it's resonating. What are some things we've been thinking about? Do we go out and test them? So having a more open conversation rather than saying, I, as the product manager, want to do it this way. That is one of the things that we've seen makes it more
Yeah.
difficult for someone to feel like, as a UX professional, to feel like they have a place in that decision making process.
Yeah, and you can kind of get out of sync, right? If you're not in
Mhm.
the loop, and we'll talk about the silos, but if
Mhm.
oops, blurred camera, if you're not in the loop and you're just constantly being thrown, little tasks to be done,
Mhm.
um, one, that's not a very satisfying position to be in
Correct.
as a UXer, especially your more skilled UXers. But two, they don't have that insight even to what the PMs are thinking,
Right.
strategically. Your roadmaps, get out of sync.
Doesn't work.
It just works
Yeah,
well if
it
you
doesn't
do
work.
collaborate with your PMs and you build a partnership. But we'll talk about
Yeah.
the silos.
Yes. And so I think we're kind of softening the conversation. So let's
Or-
keep it real. Let's just keep it real. We have both seen instances in house, especially where there was a lot of tension between product management professionals, whether it's leadership or the person you're working with at the product or service level. We've seen a lot of drama between their roles and responsibilities and what they think they should be doing, and us as UX people or people that were a part of our UX teams. So
Mhm.
let's talk about what some of those ugly moments look like. What are some examples that stick in
You
your mind?
know, let's go with a pretty rough recent example where you had a UX team and your product managers didn't even really know who the UXer was. It's thrown over. Whoosh,
Go to the wall.
work on
Mhm.
this. Wherever that was sent. There was a feature added, a
Mhm.
story, and some UXer picked it up, had no idea. We came in and were like, we're working with the product management team. We need to talk to the UX, or we need to see what's
Mhm.
going on. And really, they didn't know. They had no idea about the strategic roadmap, looking forward, and what they were doing actually might cause issues and rework. But again, it was because you didn't have that collaborative interaction. This UXer we were working with had some really good ideas based on some research she had done. Nothing, there was no communication going back and forth. So while she's going down one track, the product management team has,
Different.
they're going to rebuild. They've got this whole big effort that they're planning. So that came into play. She had
Mhm.
research that said that big effort might be not such a good thing. But again, because there wasn't communication and they were operating, I mean, truly in silos,
Mhm.
and throwing things over the fence, there was a lot of out of sync work occurring and a lot of rework. And
And
that
trying,
UXer was frustrated,
yes.
very, very frustrated. So,
And in what you just said, the example is a really good one around the numerous examples we've seen in experiences where the product manager is doing their own research
yeah,
and the UX professional, because I don't want to say researcher or designer, the UX professional is doing their own
their
research.
own research.
And so what you have then is just put yourself in the shoes of that UX professional who comes into the room where the product manager is going to start to share like kind of what's coming down the pike. And you sit there and you see that the product manager did research without you, did
Right.
research and made inferences or analyzed it in a way where things are not completely accurate,
Hmm. Right.
didn't take into consideration the fact that that research may have implications for more than the feature that you're there to talk about.
Yes.
But it may have broader implications that you as a UX professional can see that they can't because they're focused on what's next. So
Yes.
you look at those three things, and what you have is two people that are going to bump heads.
Right.
And
Right.
it ultimately comes down to then it becomes a contest to see who can trump who, who's
Yes.
going to
Yeah.
undermine who's going to question the other's work or perspectives.
Which was occurring. You know.
And it has occurred
Yes.
across a number of examples.
Yes.
In those instances, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? So, one, you break down the silos.
Mhm.
So your UX team, if they're not part of that organization, they need to be in the loop. They need to
Mhm.
be participating in those roadmap discussions. They need to be contributing if they have something to contribute. They're doing research. So that's the beginning. Is just open up communication channels,
Mhm.
give them a seat at the table. You're all working on this experience, so they
Mhm.
need a seat at the table. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I think a lot of UXers, when it comes to product management,
Mhm.
you hate to say it bluntly, but don't have a backbone. There are some, again, it goes back to, I think my role's this as a product manager and your
Mhm.
role's this, and vice versa. But, if you don't kind of stand up, and I'm not talking about in a confrontational way, bring your
Yeah.
data to the table. You're going to have to champion for it in some organizations, and that's just a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and in that, it can be helpful, or it is helpful to sit down and talk about roles and ways of working,
Yeah.
and where do we come together and do things together versus where do our responsibilities go in different directions,
Yeah.
and to have or build that consensus with your partner or peer, either in UX or product management, can go a long way so that whatever you do is not seen as malicious in terms of undermining or
Right.
going around the other party. You
Right.
now have a way of working, and you can stack hands and say, okay, we're going to do these things together, we're going to do these things separately, but we come back together with the team, and we bring our expertise and our insights from our different perspectives to the broader group. I think
Right.
that's really, really helpful. Secondly, I think one of the things I've seen success in is having product and UX teams step away from what they're arguing and disagreeing about, and have them rectify, do we even have the right information or the right data to proceed? And
Mhm.
so, how can the two of them then go on a road show together and have the goal of telling a story, writing a story, creating a story around what it is that you want the team to focus on? So if the two go out together, there is now an opportunity to say, okay, this is what I saw in those, customer meetings, or this is what I think, and that kind of thing. And then bring it together and tell that story.
Yes, and I like the road show, example, because one of, I would say, initially, probably one of my biggest boom, boom, boom with a product manager, ended up being my best relationship with one.
Mm-hmm.
One, I had to stand up for my role, and did so, and I used data and to demonstrate. But we did the road show. So we started really, hey,
Mm-hmm.
give it a shot. Let's look at your
Yeah.
roadmap. Let's align our roadmaps.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do we agree we need to go out and do?
Yes.
And let's do some of it together. And you've even agreed upon, like, let's say, the scripts. If you're
Mm-hmm.
doing in-depth interviews or if you're going on site somewhere, you collaborate on it so
Right.
that everyone feels like they're getting the answers they need. And from a UX perspective, you feel like you're going in that depth that's often needed.
Yes.
So I found that to work really well and to be its own selling point for UX sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Going in and doing that. And that, again, it starts making that product manager feel like I've got a partner,
Mm-hmm.
because we
Mm-hmm.
know product managers have a lot on their plate.
Mm-hmm.
So give the right arguments, champion for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
align those roadmaps to demonstrate that value,
Mm-hmm.
um, and things start working as a partnership at that point.
And with that said, come together before you bring in the broader team. So product manager,
Yeah,
bring your insights from the sales team and from, competitive intelligence. UX professional, bring your, research context or
yeah,
what you already know about the customer or things that you know from the last iteration of what you guys are doing, what needs to happen. Bring those things to the table, have a conversation together, massage things, and then reveal it to the rest of the team. That can really help to garner a relationship of
yes,
trust if there is a partnership where you're in lockstep, and then you're coming to the broader team. And even if the product manager is the voice of things and
yeah,
kind of sharing out what the plans are, at least your UX partner will feel like they had some input, they have a stake in the game, that like
yeah.
there's ownership to some of what you're articulating to the rest of the team.
Yes, and that's important. Both from a
Mhm.
UX growth, as some of the junior UXers need that opportunity, especially
Mhm.
if they're being coached along the way, but also for the product itself. Now you're really getting those insights, you're understanding the problems.
Mhm.
There's not some of that guesswork that can occur, just based on maybe some marketing pieces, which is good. But
Mhm.
it brings in that valuable data. It's going to help your product. It's going to help morale. So that's just what it is.
And one thing that you said that I think is worth noting, when you think about pulling in product manager, when you think about pulling in your UX professionals, not just like we started the conversation out around the fact that some people are more strategic than others, there is
Yeah,
an opportunity at some point because a lot of teams are running lean right now.
yeah,
There is a need to assess whether or not the UX professional that you're expecting to be your partner, that they are strategic in their thinking. Because if they are not, then they are probably not the right person to bring into some of these discussions because they will be more focused on the near term, the more granular, the
yeah.
things that are not the longer term. So you have to first, as a product manager, you have to first make that assessment. Is this person strategic enough to do these things with me, or are we going to get so far in the weeds that we're not
Right.
thinking about the bigger picture? So
Yep.
you've got to do that work as a product manager to consider whether or not this is the right person. And if they're not the right person, then you're going to need support from someone.
Right.
From
Right. And
something.
that's a fair statement to say. Just because you have a UX title, yeah, it doesn't mean you might not have that skill set or the
Mhm.
experience yet. So that
Mhm.
is very fair to say, on the UX part,
Mhm.
if you're getting in the weeds on where a button goes, yeah, they're gonna, product management's not gonna see you as that partner. They're gonna see you as their designer. So that
Yeah,
very fair to say.
yeah. And you started out by saying you have systems thinking experience and expertise.
Yes,
So that is where that comes in. If your UX professional does not have that, do not pull them into conversations that they, in some cases, may not care about.
right, right, or
Mhm.
understand
Or
maybe.
understand.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and let's emphasize still keeping your UX in the loop. So
Mhm.
don't operate in those silos where they don't really understand what's kind of that long term vision, or
Mhm.
maybe the long term business goals. I still think even if they're not that go to partner yet, they still need to know those kind of things to stay abreast of what they
Absolutely.
need to be doing. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for listening today. We are done with this topic because I think that there is so much more that we can go into, but we'll leave that for another time. Please reach out if you have any topics or questions for us. We